The sound of champagne glasses clinking echoed through the upscale restaurant as I sat frozen in my chair, watching my fiancée Natalie laugh with her childhood friend Tyler across the room. What I had just overheard would shatter everything. I thought I knew about the woman I was supposed to marry in 3 weeks. Her voice, usually so sweet when she spoke to me, carried a different tone as she leaned closer to Tyler at their corner table. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus thinks he's so perfect with his stable job and his 5-year plans, she whispered, not realizing I could hear every word from where I sat behind the decorative plant. But Tyler, you make me feel alive again, like the girl I used to be before I settled for safe and boring. The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years together, 6 months engaged, and she thought I was just her safe option. I had arrived, early to surprise her for our dinner date, only to find her already here with Tyler. The same Tyler who had been messaging her constantly for the past month. The same Tyler she claimed was just catching up with after moving back to Portland. As I watched her place her hand over his on the table, everything became crystal clear. This wasn't just catching up between old friends. "When are you going?" "To tell him?" Tyler asked, his voice carrying that cocky confidence I remembered from college. "We've been planning this for weeks, Nat. The cabin in Lake Tahoe is booked, and I've already arranged everything for after." My blood ran cold. Planning what for weeks? I gripped my water glass tighter, fighting the urge to march over there and demand answers. Instead, I stayed hidden, needing to hear the full truth. Natalie sighed dramatically, the same way she did when I asked her to help with wedding planning. I know. It's just... Marcus has been so excited about the wedding. He's already paid for everything, picked out his groomsmen, written his vows." She paused, taking a sip of her wine. "But you're right. I can't marry him when my heart belongs to you." The restaurant around me seemed to blur as those words sank in. Heart belongs to you. 3 years of my life, thinking we were building something real together. 3 years of supporting her through her mother's illness, her job changes, her dreams of starting her own marketing firm. I had been there for every crisis, every celebration, every mundane Tuesday night when she needed someone to listen to her vent about work. "So when?" Tyler pressed. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. "This weekend," Natalie said firmly. "I'll tell him this weekend. We can leave for Tahoe on Sunday morning, get married at that little chapel you found, and start our new life together." She giggled, actually giggled, like she was planning a surprise party instead of destroying someone's life. "It's going to be perfect, just like we always dreamed when we were kids." I had heard enough. My hands were shaking as I quietly stood up and walked toward the exit, careful to avoid their line of sight. The cool Portland evening air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. 21 days until our wedding. 21 days, and she was planning to run away with Tyler this weekend. The drive back to our shared apartment in the Pearl District felt like an eternity. Every red light gave me more time to think, to process what I had just discovered. Natalie's car wasn't in our parking garage yet, which meant she was probably still with Tyler, probably finalizing their escape plan while I drove home like an idiot, none the wiser. Our apartment, once a symbol of our future together, now felt like a museum of lies. The wedding dress hanging in the closet, the save-the-date magnets on the refrigerator, the joint bank account statements scattered on the kitchen counter showing all the deposits I had made for our vendors. Everything we had built together was about to crumble, and she was going to let me find out on our wedding day. I poured myself a scotch and sat on the couch we had picked out together at West Elm, staring at the engagement photos on the mantel. In every single picture, Natalie's smile looked genuine, her eyes bright with what I thought was love. Had it all been an act? When had Tyler come back into the picture? When had she decided that our life together wasn't enough? My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Hey babe, Tyler and I are catching up over dinner. Don't wait up, probably going to be a late night. Love you." The casual lie delivered with a heart emoji made my stomach turn. How many other late nights had been spent with him? How many other lies had I unknowingly accepted? I thought back to when Tyler first reached out to her on social media. It was about a month ago, right after he moved back to Portland for a new job in renewable energy. Natalie had been excited to hear from him, showing me his messages about wanting to reconnect with old friends. She had asked if it was okay if they met up for coffee, and I had encouraged it, thinking it was sweet that she wanted to maintain childhood friendships. What an idiot I had been. The signs were all there, glaring at me in hindsight. The way she started staying late at work more often. The new clothes she bought, claiming she needed to update her professional wardrobe. The way she would step into the other room when her phone rang, saying it was just work calls. The sudden interest in hiking and outdoor activities, things she had never cared about before, but that I knew Tyler was passionate about from his social media posts. Most telling of all was how distant she had become about the wedding planning. At first, she had been excited, pinning ideas on Pinterest and dragging me to venue tours. But in recent weeks, she had seemed overwhelmed by every decision, postponing choices about flowers, avoiding discussions about our honeymoon, even seeming annoyed when I brought up finalizing the guest list. I had attributed it to pre-wedding stress. I had been patient, taking on more of the planning myself, thinking I was being a supportive fiancé. In reality, I had been planning a wedding that would never happen while she planned her escape with another man. The apartment door opened around midnight, and Natalie walked in with that same bright smile she always wore, as if she hadn't just spent the evening planning to abandon our entire life together. She kissed my cheek and sat down next to me on the couch, curling up against my side like nothing had changed. "How was your night?" she asked, scrolling through her phone. "I missed you." The words felt like acid in my ears. She missed me while planning to run away with Tyler. She missed me while finalizing details for their elopement. She missed me while sitting at that restaurant, calling me boring and safe. "It was fine," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. "How was catching up with Tyler?" "Oh, you know how it is," she said with a dismissive wave. "Just reminiscing about old times, talking about how much Portland has changed. Nothing too exciting." Another lie, delivered so casually that I wondered how many others I had missed over the years. I watched her get ready for bed, brushing her teeth and putting on the pajamas I had bought her for Christmas, all while humming happily to herself. She climbed into our bed, the bed where we had spent countless nights talking about our future, and kissed me goodnight like she had every night for 3 years. "Sweet dreams, Marcus," she whispered, settling in beside me. "I love you." Those 3 words, words that had once filled me with warmth and security, now felt like daggers. She loved me, but not enough to choose me. She loved me, but was planning to disappear with Tyler in 4 days. She loved me, but thought I was boring and safe compared to the excitement Tyler offered. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and listening to her peaceful breathing beside me. By the time the sun rose over the Portland skyline, I had made my decision. If Natalie wanted to play games, if she wanted to plan her great escape while keeping me in the dark, then I could play games too. But I wouldn't be the pathetic fool, left standing at the altar, wondering where his bride had gone. I wouldn't be the guy who found out about his fiancée's betrayal from a note or an empty apartment. If she wanted to elope with Tyler, then I could elope too. The irony wasn't lost on me that her best friend Zoe had always been everything Natalie wasn't. Where Natalie was impulsive, Zoe was thoughtful. Where Natalie was dramatic, Zoe was genuine. Where Natalie was now proving herself to be deceptive, Zoe had always been honest to a fault. I had noticed the way Zoe looked at me sometimes during group gatherings, the way she paid attention when I spoke, the way she remembered small details about my work or my interests that even Natalie forgot. I had always pushed those observations aside, telling myself I was imagining things, that I was being loyal to Natalie by not acknowledging any attraction to her friends. But loyalty, I was learning, was a two-way street. Zoe Hamilton was a graphic designer who worked from her home studio, creating beautiful artwork that she sold at local galleries and farmers markets. She was the quiet one in Natalie's friend group, often overshadowed by Natalie's louder personality. But I had always found her the most interesting to talk to. She read voraciously, traveled solo to places that inspired her art, and had a way of seeing beauty in everyday moments that Natalie seemed to miss entirely. More importantly, Zoe was single, having ended a long-term relationship 6 months ago with a guy who didn't appreciate her artistic ambitions. She had confided in me about it during Natalie's birthday party, how he had wanted her to get a real job and stop wasting time on her art. I had been angry on her behalf, telling her that anyone who didn't support her dreams didn't deserve her. The memory of that conversation sparked an idea that grew stronger as Thursday turned into Friday. If Natalie could make secret plans with Tyler, if she could deceive me while I planned our wedding in good faith, then perhaps it was time I stopped being the predictable, safe choice she obviously found so boring. Friday morning, Natalie left for work with the same kiss on the cheek and "have a great day" that had become our routine. But instead of heading to my office at Innovate Tech Solutions, I drove across town to the Alberta Arts District, where Zoe's studio was located in a converted warehouse. I had never visited her studio before, though Natalie had been there several times for girls' nights and art shows. The building was exactly what I expected for Zoe. Quirky, artistic, full of character. Her unit was on the second floor, and through the large windows, I could see her working at an easel, completely absorbed in her painting. I stood outside for a full 5 minutes, questioning what I was about to do. Was I about to make a terrible mistake? Was I letting my anger at Natalie drive me to do something I would regret? Or was I finally about to stop being the safe, predictable guy and take a chance on something real? The decision was made for me when Zoe looked up and saw me through the window. Her face lit up with surprise and genuine pleasure, the kind of expression I realized I hadn't seen from Natalie in months. She hurried to open the door, paint still on her hands and a smudge of blue on her cheek. Marcus, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. What are you doing here? She asked, stepping aside to let me into her studio. Is everything okay? The space was incredible. Canvases lined the walls, each one bursting with color and emotion. Half-finished paintings sat on easels, and the scent of oil paint and turpentine filled the air. This was Zoe's world, her passion, the place where she created beauty that would outlast any of us. I needed to see you, I said, the words coming out more intensely than I had planned. There's something I need to tell you, and I need to know if I'm completely crazy for thinking what I'm thinking. Zoe set down her paintbrush and gave me her full attention. Those dark eyes that never missed anything focused entirely on me. You're scaring me a little, but okay. What's going on? I took a deep breath and told her everything. About overhearing Natalie and Tyler at the restaurant, about their plans to elope this weekend, about the lies and the deception, and the casual way she had dismissed our entire relationship as boring and safe. Zoe's expression shifted from surprise to shock to something that looked almost like relief. I'm so sorry, Marcus, she said softly when I finished. I had suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything without being sure. She's been different lately. Distracted. And Tyler. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Tyler has always been able to make Natalie forget about everything else. Even when we were teenagers, she would drop everyone and everything when he came around. You're not surprised, I said, and it wasn't a question. I'm surprised she's actually going through with it, Zoe admitted. But no, I'm not surprised she's choosing him. Natalie has always been drawn to chaos, to drama, to the next exciting thing. You represent stability and growth and all the things a mature woman should want. But Natalie... She shook her head. Natalie is still 17 years old in her heart, chasing the boy who makes her feel like the most important person in the world. And what about you? I asked, stepping closer to her. What do you want? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with 3 years of unspoken attraction and carefully maintained boundaries. Zoe looked up at me, and I could see the internal battle playing out across her face. Loyalty to her friend warring with her own feelings, fear of making a mistake competing with the possibility of something real. I want, she said slowly, to not have this conversation while you're angry and hurt and looking for revenge against Natalie. This isn't about revenge, I said. Though even as I said it, I wondered if that was entirely true. This is about the fact that I've spent 3 years with the wrong person while the right person was standing right there. Zoe's eyes widened, and I could see her trying to process what I had just said. Marcus, you're getting married in 3 weeks. No, I said firmly. I'm not. Natalie made that decision when she chose Tyler. She just hasn't told me yet. I reached out and gently wiped the smudge of blue paint from her cheek. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The silence stretched between us, filled with possibility and fear and the weight of a decision that would change everything. Outside, Portland went about its business, people rushing to meetings and coffee dates and normal Friday afternoon activities, unaware that inside this art studio, two people were standing on the precipice of either the biggest mistake or the best decision of their lives. "If I say yes to whatever you're thinking," Zoe finally whispered, "there's no going back. You know that, right? Natalie will never forgive either of us." "I know," I said. "The question is, do you care more about Natalie's forgiveness or your own happiness?" It was a harsh question, but a fair one. Zoe had spent years being the supportive friend, the one who listened to Natalie's complaints about me, the one who gave advice about our relationship while harboring her own feelings. She had been loyal to a friendship that was about to be destroyed, anyway by Natalie's own choices. "What exactly are you asking me, Marcus?" she said, though I could see in her eyes that she already knew. "I'm asking you to run away with me," I said simply. "This weekend, before Natalie can disappear with Tyler. Before I have to pretend to be surprised when she breaks up with me. Before we waste any more time pretending we don't feel what we feel." Zoe stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing everything: years of friendship, moral obligations, her own desires, the risk of heartbreak, the possibility of happiness. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Where would we go?" And just like that, I knew she was saying yes. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made Portland feel like a postcard. I woke up before my alarm, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I remembered what Zoe and I had planned. She had texted me at midnight with a simple message: "I'm in. Meet me at Pioneer Courthouse Square at 9 a.m. Bring your passport." Natalie was still asleep beside me, her phone charging on the nightstand where it had been buzzing intermittently since dawn. Probably Tyler, I thought grimly, finalizing their own escape plans. The irony wasn't lost on me that while she slept, peacefully next to her unsuspecting fiancé, her best friend and I were about to beat her at her own game. I slipped out of bed quietly and gathered the essentials I had packed the night before: passport, credit cards, enough clothes for a week, and the engagement ring I planned to leave behind. As I moved around our bedroom, collecting items that represented my real life versus the life I was about to abandon, Natalie stirred but didn't wake. She looked so peaceful, so innocent in sleep, that for a moment I questioned everything. Then, I remembered her laugh at the restaurant, the casual way she had called me boring, the excitement in her voice when she talked about starting a new life with Tyler. The doubt evaporated, replaced by a cold determination that surprised me with its intensity. I left a note on the kitchen counter where she would find it when she woke up. It was simple, direct, and probably kinder than she deserved. "Natalie, I know about Tyler and your plans for tomorrow. I hope you'll be happy together. Don't bother looking for me. Marcus." I placed my engagement ring next to the note and walked out the door of our apartment for the last time. Pioneer Courthouse Square was bustling with its usual Saturday morning energy. Street musicians played for early commuters, food trucks served coffee and breakfast burritos, and tourists consulted maps while trying to decide which direction to explore first. I spotted Zoe immediately, sitting on one of the red brick steps with a small rolling suitcase beside her and a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She was wearing a flowing midi dress in deep emerald green, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and oversized sunglasses that couldn't quite hide her nervous energy. When she saw me approaching, she stood up with a smile that was equal parts excitement and terror. "So," she said, adjusting the strap of her bag, "this is really happening." "Having second thoughts?" I asked, though I hoped desperately that she wasn't. "Third and fourth thoughts," she admitted with a laugh. "But no, I'm not backing out. I've spent too many years watching other people live their lives while I played it safe. Besides," she added with a mischievous grin, "I've always wanted to be spontaneous, and this is about as spontaneous as it gets." I had spent hours the night before researching options for our impromptu elopement. Vegas was the obvious choice, but it felt too cliché, too much like something you'd see in a romantic comedy. Instead, I had found something that felt more like us, a small coastal town in Northern California called Mendocino, where you could get married on the bluffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean with just 24 hours' notice. California, I told her as we climbed into my car. There's a place called Mendocino, about 6 hours south. Victorian houses, dramatic coastline, and a justice of the peace who specializes in last-minute weddings for people who don't want to wait. Zoe's eyes lit up. I've always wanted to see the Northern California coast. I've done paintings based on photographs, but I've never actually been there. She paused, studying my face. Marcus, are you sure about this? I mean, really sure? Because once we do this, there's no pretending it was just a moment of temporary insanity. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said. And as the words left my mouth, I realized they were completely true. Zoe, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about getting back at Natalie or proving a point. This is about the fact that I've been in love with you for at least a year, maybe longer, and I was too loyal, or too stupid, or too scared to admit it. She stared at me, her lips slightly parted in surprise. A year? Remember last Christmas? At Derek's party? You were telling that story about the time you got lost in Prague and ended up having the best adventure of your life. Natalie was on her phone the entire time, completely ignoring you. But I couldn't stop listening. I remember thinking that I could listen to you tell stories for hours. That you saw the world in this beautiful, complicated way that made me want to see it through your eyes. Zoe's cheeks flushed pink. I remember that night. You were the only one really listening to me. Everyone else was drunk or distracted, but you asked follow-up questions and remembered details. I went home thinking about how different you were from the guys I usually dated. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you were with my best friend, she said simply. Because I'm not the kind of person who goes after taken men, even when the taken man seems miserable half the time. She looked out the window as we merged onto I-5 South. But also, because I convinced myself I was imagining the connection between us. It was easier to believe that than to admit I was falling for someone I couldn't have. As we drove through the rolling hills of southern Oregon, Zoe told me about her art, her dreams of having a gallery show in San Francisco, her plan to spend a month in Tuscany next summer painting landscapes. I told her about my work developing software for renewable energy companies, my secret ambition to start my own firm, my love of hiking trails that most people never bothered to explore. These were conversations I had never had with Natalie. Not really. Oh, we had talked about surface things, day-to-day logistics, shared complaints about work or friends. But we had never dug into the deeper questions of what we wanted from life, what drove us, what we dreamed about when we let ourselves dream. Big. Can I ask you something? Zoe said as we stopped for gas in Redding. When you proposed to Natalie, did you feel like you were settling? Or did it feel right at the time? I considered the question while filling up the tank. It was a fair question, and she deserved an honest answer. It felt like the logical next step, I said finally. We had been together for almost 3 years. We were living together. Our families expected it. I loved her, or I thought I did. But looking back, I think I loved the idea of her more than I loved who she actually was. What do you mean? I loved the version of Natalie that existed when she was happy, when everything was going her way. But I never learned to love her, when she was difficult or demanding or cruel. I just endured those parts of her, waiting for the good Natalie to come back. I replaced the gas cap and leaned against the car. With you, even your flaws seem lovable. The way you overthink everything, the way you get paint under your fingernails and forget to wash it off. The way you apologize for taking up space even when you deserve to be the center of attention. Zoe looked down at her hands, and I could see that she was indeed sporting purple paint under 2 of her fingernails. You notice things, she said softly. I notice you, I corrected. I've been noticing you for a long time. By the time we reached Mendocino, the sun was beginning to set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked like something from one of Zoe's paintings. The town was exactly what I had hoped. Victorian houses perched on dramatic bluffs, cypress trees bent by ocean winds, and a main street lined with art galleries and wine bars that felt like they belonged in a different century. We checked into separate rooms at a bed and breakfast called the White Gate Inn, both of us needing space to process what we were about to do. My room had windows that looked out over the ocean, and I stood there for a long time, watching waves, crash against the rocks below, and trying to absorb the magnitude of the decision I had made. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with calls and texts from Natalie. I had finally turned it off around noon, but not before glimpsing enough of her messages to understand that she had found my note and was alternating between fury and panic. Several of the messages begged me to come home so we could talk, while others accused me of being dramatic and childish. The last one I had seen simply said, "Marcus, please don't do anything stupid." Too late for that, I thought as I changed into the one nice shirt I had packed. Zoe and I met for dinner at a restaurant called Café Beaujolais, where candles flickered on small tables and the sound of the ocean provided a soundtrack for our conversation. She had changed into a simple black dress that made her look elegant and slightly mysterious, and I found myself staring at her across the table, still hardly believing that this was really happening. "I called the justice of the peace," she said, taking a sip of the local Pinot Noir we were sharing. "We have an appointment tomorrow at 4 p.m. on the bluffs overlooking Mendocino Bay. She says it's one of the most beautiful spots on the coast, for a wedding." "Any regrets yet?" I asked. "About 100, she said with a laugh. "But no, not the kind you mean. I keep thinking about practical things, like the fact that I don't have a wedding dress, or that my parents are going to think I've lost my mind, or that Natalie is probably calling everyone we know right now, trying to figure out where you are." "What about the important things? Do you regret saying yes to me?" Zoe reached across the table and took my hand, her fingers cool from her wine glass. "Marcus, I need you to understand something. I've been in love with you since the first time Natalie brought you to girls' night, and you spent the entire evening asking thoughtful questions about everyone's lives instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. I've watched you be kind to servers and patient with elderly people and gentle with children. I've seen you defend people who weren't there to defend themselves and stand up for things you believed in even when it was uncomfortable." She paused, her thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "I've also watched you try to make Natalie happy, even when she was being unreasonable or cruel. I've seen you compromise parts of yourself to keep peace, and I've wanted to shake you and tell you that you deserved better. So no, I don't regret saying yes to you. My only regret is that it took this long for both of us to be brave enough to admit what we were feeling." After dinner, we walked along the bluffs in comfortable silence, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and cypress. The moon was nearly full, casting a silver path across the water that seemed to stretch all the way to Japan. When we reached a bench overlooking the bay, Zoe stopped and turned to face me. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest," she said. "Is there any part of you that's doing this to hurt Natalie? Because if there is, even a small part, we should stop now before we do something we'll both regret." I had been asking myself the same question all day, and I was grateful that she had the courage to voice it. I won't lie and say that there isn't some satisfaction in the idea of her finding out that I moved on before she could hurt me, I said slowly. "But Zoe, if I just wanted revenge, there are easier ways to get it. I could have confronted her and Tyler at the restaurant. I could have called off the wedding publicly and humiliated her in front of everyone we know. I could have told all our mutual friends what she was planning. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because this isn't about hurting her. This is about choosing happiness over loyalty to someone who was never loyal to me. This is about finally admitting that I fell in love with the wrong person, and the right person was there all along." I took her hands in mine. "Zoe, even if Natalie had never planned to leave me, even if she had been the perfect fiancée, I think I still would have realized eventually that what I felt for you was different from what I felt for her. Deeper. More real. More real how? With Natalie, I was always performing, being the boyfriend she wanted, saying the things she wanted to hear, avoiding topics that might upset her. With you, I can just be myself. I don't have to edit my thoughts or hide parts of my personality or pretend to be more or less than I actually am." I pulled her closer, until we were just inches apart. "With you, I feel like the best version of myself without having to try." Zoe's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I feel the same way. When I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to apologize for being too quiet or too serious or too focused on my art. You make me feel like all the things that other people see as flaws are actually the things that make me interesting." We kissed then, standing on the bluffs overlooking the Pacific with the moon reflecting off the water below us. It was different from any kiss I had ever experienced, full of promise and possibility and the recognition that we were crossing a line we could never uncross. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing heavily. "So we're really doing this," Zoe whispered. "We're really doing this," I confirmed. We walked back to the inn hand in hand, and when we reached the hallway where our rooms were located, we stood there for a moment, both understanding that whatever happened next would set the tone for everything that followed. "I should probably get some sleep," Zoe said, though she made no move toward her door. "Big day tomorrow." "Probably," I agreed, also not moving. "Marcus? Yeah? Thank you." "For what?" "For being brave enough to take a chance on something that might be wonderful instead of settling for something that was slowly killing both of us." I kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for saying yes to a crazy man with a crazy plan." "Good night, future husband," she said with a grin that made my heart skip. "Good night, future wife." As I lay in bed that night, listening to the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below, I thought about the phone call I would have to make to my parents, the conversations I would have to have with friends, the logistics of untangling a life I had built with someone else. It would be complicated, and messy, and probably painful. But for the first time in years, I was excited about the future instead of just resigned to it. Tomorrow, I would marry Zoe Hamilton on a bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and whatever came after that, we would face it together. Sunday morning in Mendocino dawned gray and misty, with fog rolling in from the Pacific that made the Victorian houses look like something from a ghost story. I woke up disoriented for a moment, forgetting where I was until the sound of seagulls and crashing waves reminded me that I was about to get married to Zoe Hamilton in 8 hours. My phone, which I had finally turned back on, showed 47 missed calls and countless text messages. Most were from Natalie, but there were also several from Derek, my parents, and even a few from Tyler himself. I scrolled through them with a mixture of curiosity and dread, trying to piece together what had been happening in Portland while Zoe and I drove toward our new life. Natalie's messages started angry and escalated to desperate. "How could you just leave like that?" Followed by, "This is so typical of you, running away instead of talking about problems," and eventually, "Marcus, please come home. We can work this out. I made a mistake." The timestamp on that last message was 3 a.m., which meant she had been awake all night, probably pacing around our apartment, trying to figure out how her carefully planned escape had been derailed by mine. Tyler's messages were more interesting. "Dude, what the hell? Natalie is freaking out. She says you found out about us but won't tell me how. Call me back." Then, 2 hours later, "Look, I get that you're pissed, but you can't just disappear. Natalie is talking about calling off everything and trying to fix things with you. This is messing up our plans." The entitlement in those messages was staggering. Even after planning to steal my fiancée, Tyler was annoyed that I had the audacity to disrupt his timeline. Derek's messages were worried but supportive. "Nat called me looking for you. She's crying and saying something about a misunderstanding. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Followed by, "Whatever's going on, you know I've got your back. Just let me know you're safe." I was about to put the phone away when it rang. Natalie's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Marcus, thank God," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Where are you?" "I've been worried sick." "I'm exactly where I need to be, Natalie. Look, I know you're upset about Tyler, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. Yes, we've been talking, and yes, maybe I got caught up in some old feelings, but I never actually planned to leave you. That conversation you overheard was just fantasy. Just me venting about pre-wedding stress." The lie came so easily to her that I almost admired it. If I hadn't heard every word she had said to Tyler, hadn't seen the way she touched his hand across the table, I might have even believed her. "Natalie, stop. Marcus, please just come home and we can talk about this. The wedding is in 2 weeks. We've already paid for everything. Our families are expecting us. You can't just throw away 3 years because of a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. I heard you tell Tyler that your heart belongs to him. I heard you plan your elopement to Lake Tahoe. I heard you call me boring and safe." My voice was calm, which seemed to unnerve her more than if I had been shouting. There was a long pause. Okay, fine. Maybe I said some things I shouldn't have. Maybe Tyler and I got carried away talking about old times. But Marcus, that doesn't mean anything. You're the one I'm marrying. You're the one I chose. No, Natalie, I'm the one you settled for. There's a difference. I looked out my window toward the inn's garden, where Zoe was sitting on a bench reading a book, her hair catching the morning light. And for what it's worth, I'm not the one you're marrying anymore. What does that mean? It means I'm marrying someone else. Today. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that I thought she had hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What did you just say? I said I'm getting married today. To someone who actually wants to be with me, not someone who sees me as a backup plan. Who? She demanded, her voice rising. Who are you? Marrying? Someone who appreciates the things about me that you find boring. Someone who doesn't think loyalty and stability are character flaws. Marcus, this is insane. You can't just marry some random person because you're angry at me. This isn't you. You don't do impulsive things. You're right. The old me didn't do impulsive things. The old me would have found out about your affair and tried to work it out. The old me would have gone to couples therapy and convinced myself that your betrayal was somehow my fault. I paused, watching Zoe turn a page in her book. But the old me was miserable, and I'm done being miserable. Marcus, please don't do this. If you're trying to make me jealous, it's working. If you're trying to hurt me, congratulations, you've succeeded. But don't ruin your life just to prove a point. This isn't about you, Natalie. For the first time in 3 years, this is about me and what makes me happy. Who is she? Natalie asked again, her voice taking on a desperate edge. Do I know her? I could have lied. I could have told her it was someone from work, someone she had never met. But something in me wanted her to know exactly what she had lost by choosing Tyler over our relationship. Yes, you know her very well. Another long pause. It's one of my friends, isn't it? Oh my God. Marcus, which one of my friends did you manipulate into this insane revenge plot? I didn't manipulate anyone, and this isn't revenge. This is someone who has been in love with me while I was too blind and too loyal to notice. Someone who sees everything good about me that you've spent the last year taking for granted. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line, and I knew she was running through possibilities in her head. Ashley? No. She's dating that lawyer. Kayla? She just moved to Seattle. Oh God, please tell me it's not Brianna. She's married with 2 kids. Natalie, I'm hanging up now. I hope you and Tyler are very happy together. Wait, don't hang up. Just tell me who it is. I have a right to know which of my friends betrayed me. The same right I had to know you were planning to abandon me at the altar. I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. My hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline of the conversation, but I also felt lighter than I had in months. There was something liberating about finally being completely honest, about saying exactly what I thought without worrying about managing someone else's emotions. Zoe looked up from her book as I approached the garden bench. She was wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked more beautiful than any woman had a right to look while reading a paperback mystery novel. That sounded intense, she said, closing her book and making room for me on the bench. Natalie called. I told her I was getting married today. Zoe's eyes widened. You told her? How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She's convinced this is some kind of revenge plot and that I manipulated you into going along with it. I took her hand, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. She also demanded to know which of her friends betrayed her, which I thought was rich considering she was planning to betray me with Tyler. Did you tell her it was me? Not directly, but she'll figure it out. Natalie isn't stupid, just selfish. She'll go through her list of friends and realize you're the only one who makes sense. Zoe was quiet for a moment, staring out at the fog-shrouded ocean. She's going to hate me forever. Probably. How do you feel about that? Honestly, sad but not devastated. Our friendship hasn't been the same since I graduated college and started pursuing art seriously. Natalie sees my career as a hobby, something cute that I'll give up when I find a real job and settle down. She doesn't understand why I spend weekends at art fairs instead of shopping, or why I'd rather visit museums than go clubbing. Zoe turned to look at me. She's been a good friend in many ways, but she's also been dismissive of the things that matter most to me. I've been realizing lately that I've been putting more effort into maintaining our friendship than she has. What about the rest of your friends? Her friend group? They're mostly her friends who tolerated me, not friends who genuinely liked me. The only one I'll really miss is Derek, and he's actually your friend anyway. She squeezed my hand. Marcus, I need you to know that I'm not doing this lightly. I understand what I'm giving up, but I also understand what I'm gaining. We spent the morning walking through Mendocino's art galleries and antique shops, holding hands like any other couple on a romantic weekend getaway. In a small boutique called Moonrise, Zoe found a vintage dress in ivory silk that looked like it had been made for her. It was simple and elegant, with 3/4 sleeves and a flowing skirt that would be perfect for a clifftop wedding. It's not exactly traditional, she said, studying herself in the dressing room mirror. Nothing about this is traditional, I pointed out. That's what makes it perfect. While Zoe browsed for accessories, I found a jewelry store where an elderly craftsman was hand-forging wedding bands. He had a simple gold band that fit my finger perfectly. And when I described what I was looking for Zoe, he showed me a delicate ring with a small moonstone surrounded by tiny diamonds. Made it for my granddaughter, but she eloped to Vegas. Instead, he said with a chuckle. Said she wanted something flashier. But this one has character, like it's meant for someone who appreciates understated beauty. It was perfect for Zoe, and when I tried it on her finger later, it fit as if it had been sized specifically for her. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation and nervous energy. We had lunch at a cafe overlooking the harbor, where Zoe sketched the fishing boats, while I made phone calls to arrange for our marriage license and confirm our appointment with Justice of the Peace Margaret Chen. We were technically supposed to have applied for the license 24 hours in advance, but Mrs. Chen had connections at the county clerk's office and assured me it could be expedited. "Cold feet yet?" Zoe asked as we walked back to the inn to get ready. "The opposite," I said. "I keep waiting for the anxiety to hit, for my rational brain to kick in and tell me this is crazy. But all I feel is excited." "Good, because I think I'm nervous enough for both of us." She stopped in front of the inn and turned to face me. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. If Natalie hadn't planned to leave you, if you had never overheard that conversation, do you think you would have eventually realized you had feelings for me?" It was a question that had been nagging at me since yesterday, and I had been dreading having to answer it. "I don't know," I said finally. "I'd like to think yes, but I honestly don't know. I was so focused on being loyal to Natalie, on making our relationship work, that I might have spent years ignoring my feelings for you. So in a weird way, we owe this to her betrayal. Maybe. Or maybe we would have found our way to each other eventually. Maybe this was just the universe giving us permission to stop pretending we didn't feel what we felt." Zoe smiled, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "I just don't want you to wake up in 6 months and realize you married me for the wrong reasons." "Zoe, look at me." I took her face in my hands. "I'm not marrying you because I'm angry at Natalie. I'm not marrying you to prove a point or get revenge or because I'm having some kind of breakdown. I'm marrying you because yesterday morning I woke up in bed next to someone who was planning to abandon me, and tonight I want to go to sleep next to someone who chose me. I'm marrying you because for the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She kissed me then, right there on the front steps of the White Gate Inn, and I knew that whatever happened next, whatever complications arose from our impulsive decision, this moment was worth all of it. At 4 p.m., we met Justice of the Peace Margaret Chen on the bluffs overlooking Mendocino Bay. She was a small, energetic woman in her 60s, who had been performing weddings in the area for over 20 years. She had chosen a spot where the cliffs dropped dramatically to the ocean below, with cypress trees providing a natural backdrop and wildflowers scattered across the grass. "I've done over 1,000 weddings," Mrs. Chen said as she set up her portable altar, "and I can always tell which couples are going to make it. You two have something special." The ceremony was simple and perfect. Mrs. Chen had us face each other while the ocean wind whipped around us, and she spoke about love being a choice you make every day, not just a feeling you fall into. When it came time for vows, neither Zoe nor I had prepared anything formal, so we spoke from the heart. "Marcus," Zoe said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "I promise to love you not just when it's easy, but when it's complicated. I promise to support your dreams even when they scare me, and to be brave enough to share my own dreams with you. I promise to choose you every day, not because I have to, but because I want to." My turn. "Zoe, I promise to see you for who you really are, not who I think you should be. I promise to appreciate all the things about you that make you unique, even when the world tries to tell you their flaws. I promise to be worthy of the love you're giving me, and to never take it for granted the way I've seen love taken for granted before." When Mrs. Chen pronounced us husband and wife, the sun broke through the fog for the first time all day, casting everything in golden light. We kissed as newlyweds while seagulls cried overhead and waves crashed against the rocks below, and I knew that whatever Natalie and Tyler were doing at that exact moment, they were missing out on something infinitely more beautiful than whatever they thought they had found together. That evening, we had dinner at the Little River Inn, where the chef had prepared a special meal when he learned we were celebrating our wedding day. As we shared a bottle of champagne and watched the sun set over the Pacific, Zoe's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and showed it to me. "Natalie." "Answer it," I said. "She's going to keep calling until you do." Zoe hesitated, then swiped to accept the call. "Hi, Natalie." "Zoe, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. Something crazy is happening. Marcus left me yesterday and he's claiming he's getting married today to one of my friends. He won't tell me who, but I'm going crazy trying to figure out who would do this to me." Zoe looked at me across the table, and I nodded encouragingly. "Natalie, it's me." The silence stretched so long that I wondered if the call had dropped. When Natalie finally spoke, her voice was barely controlled. "What did you just say?" "I said it's me. I'm the friend Marcus is marrying. We got married 2 hours ago." The explosion was immediate and spectacular. "You what?" "Zoe, what the hell is wrong with you? How could you do this to me? You're supposed to be my friend." "I am your friend, Natalie. Or I was. But I'm also in love with Marcus, and he's in love with me, and we decided to stop pretending otherwise." "This is insane. You've lost your mind. Both of you have lost your minds. You can't just steal someone's fiancé and marry him in one weekend." "I didn't steal him," Zoe said calmly. "You threw him away when you decided Tyler was more exciting. I just picked him up." "I did not throw him away. Marcus is having some kind of breakdown, because he misunderstood a conversation between Tyler and me. This whole thing is based on a misunderstanding. Natalie, stop. Just stop." Zoe's voice was firm, but not unkind. "I know about Tyler. I've known for weeks. I saw the way you lit up when he came back to town, the way you started, dressing differently and staying out late. I watched you check out of your relationship with Marcus emotionally, long before you planned to check out physically. You don't know anything about my relationship with Marcus. I know that he spent 3 years trying to make you happy while you complained about him to anyone who would listen. I know that he supported your career and your dreams, while you mocked his ambitions behind his back. I know that he would have done anything for you, and you thought that made him weak instead of understanding it made him precious." There was another long pause, and when Natalie spoke again, her voice was different, smaller. "Zoe, please. You're my best friend. We've been friends since college. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Natalie. I'm doing something for me. For the first time in our friendship, I'm putting my happiness ahead of yours. And I know that's hard for you to understand, because you've never had to do it the other way around." "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means that every time you wanted something, I stepped aside. When you liked that guy in our senior year who had asked me out first, I canceled my date so you could go out with him. When you wanted the internship at that marketing firm, I didn't apply even though it was perfect for me because I knew you wanted it more. When you met Marcus, I pretended I didn't notice how kind and funny and genuine he was because you saw him first." I reached across the table and took Zoe's free hand, amazed by her strength and grace even in this difficult moment. "But I can't step aside this time, Natalie. I can't watch you throw away the best thing that ever happened to you while I stand on the sidelines wishing I had the courage to fight for what I want. Zoe, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. Come home and we'll work everything out. Marcus and I can go to counseling, and you and I can fix our friendship. Please don't let one weekend ruin everything. It's too late, Natalie. I'm already married to him. And more than that, I'm happy. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely, completely happy. Zoe looked at me across the table, and her smile was radiant. I hope someday you can understand that I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because I love him, and he loves me, and life is too short to waste on safe choices when you have a chance at something real. She ended the call and turned off her phone, then raised her champagne glass to mine. To something real, she said. To something real, I agreed. And we toasted our new marriage as the last light faded from the California sky. 6 months later, Portland felt like a different city entirely. Spring had arrived with its usual dramatic flair, cherry blossoms lining the streets and the Saturday market bustling with energy. Zoe and I had found a loft apartment in the Alberta Arts District, not far from her old studio, where large windows flooded our space with natural light perfect for her painting. The transition back to real life hadn't been without its challenges. The romantic bubble of our Mendocino elopement had eventually given way to practical concerns like combining bank accounts, explaining our sudden marriage to confused family members, and navigating the social fallout from our dramatic departure from our previous lives. My parents had been surprisingly supportive once they got over their initial shock. My mother, who had never particularly warmed to Natalie, confessed that she had always hoped I would find someone who appreciated my quieter qualities. My father, ever practical, simply asked if I was happy, and seemed satisfied with my enthusiastic yes. Zoe's parents had been more complicated. Her mother, a professor of literature at Reed College, had been disappointed to miss her only daughter's wedding, but understood the circumstances once Zoe explained the full situation. Her father, a retired architect who had always encouraged Zoe's artistic pursuits, was thrilled that she had married someone who valued her work. The professional consequences had been minimal but significant. I had given notice at Innovate Tech Solutions and used my savings to start the renewable energy consulting firm I had always dreamed of. It was scary and uncertain, but Zoe's belief in me gave me courage I had never possessed before. Her own art career was flourishing in ways that amazed both of us. The gallery that had shown her work before was now representing her exclusively, and she had sold 3 major pieces to collectors in San Francisco. We had settled into a routine that felt both comfortable and exciting. I worked from our home office while Zoe painted in the converted bedroom we had turned into her studio. We took long walks along the Columbia River in the evenings, tried new restaurants on weekends, and hosted dinner parties for Derek and his wife, along with the small circle of friends who had supported our unconventional beginning. The only shadow on our happiness was the ongoing drama with Natalie and Tyler, which had played out in ways neither Zoe nor I could have predicted. According to Derek, who had remained in touch with mutual friends, Natalie and Tyler had indeed eloped to Lake Tahoe the weekend after our own wedding. But their fairy tale reunion had lasted less than 2 months. Tyler, it turned out, was still the same commitment-phobic person he had been in college, and the reality of being married to someone as demanding as Natalie had quickly soured their romance. Derek had run into Natalie at a coffee shop in the Pearl District just last week, and she had looked, in his words, like she hadn't slept in months. She was working at a different marketing firm now, having left her previous job in the aftermath of the personal drama. Tyler had moved to Seattle for a new position, leaving Natalie to deal with the wreckage of their impulsive decision alone. I felt sorry for her, which surprised me. The anger and betrayal I had felt 6 months ago had faded into something closer to pity. Natalie had gotten exactly what she thought she wanted, and it had turned out to be nothing like the fantasy she had built in her mind. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't overheard that conversation? Zoe asked one evening as we walked through Laurelhurst Park. The cherry trees were in full bloom, creating a canopy of pink and white overhead. Honestly, I try not to think about it too much, I said, taking her hand as we found an empty bench overlooking the pond. I like to believe we would have found our way to each other eventually, but I can't know for sure. What I do know is that I'm grateful things happened the way they did, even if the circumstances were painful. I think about it sometimes, Zoe admitted. I wonder if I would have ever been brave enough to tell you how I felt, or if I would have just watched you marry her, and spent the rest of my life wondering what if. Do you regret anything about how it happened? Zoe was quiet for a moment, watching ducks glide across the pond's surface. I regret that it cost me a friendship with Natalie, even though I know that friendship was probably doomed anyway. I regret that your family and friends didn't get to see us get married. But I don't regret choosing you, and I don't regret choosing happiness over loyalty to someone who wouldn't have done the same for me. We were interrupted by the sound of Zoe's phone ringing. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted to surprise and concern. "It's Ashley," she said, referring to one of Natalie's friends who had been particularly harsh in her judgment of our elopement. "I haven't heard from her since everything happened." "Answer it," I said. "Maybe it's time to start rebuilding some bridges." Zoe hesitated, then accepted the call. "Hi, Ashley." "Zoe, I'm so glad you answered. I wasn't sure you would want to talk to me after everything that's happened." Ashley's voice sounded strained, lacking its usual confident tone. "What's going on? You sound upset." "It's about Natalie. I think she's in real trouble and I didn't know who else to call. You know her better than anyone, and I thought maybe you might have some insight." Zoe's grip tightened on my hand. "What kind of trouble?" "She's been spiraling since Tyler left. She lost her job last month, and I think she's been drinking too much. She's been calling people from college, trying to reconnect with old friends, but she comes across as desperate and needy. She showed up at my apartment last night at 2 in the morning, crying and saying she had ruined her entire life. Ashley, I don't know what you want me to do. Natalie made it very clear that she considers me a traitor who destroyed her happiness. I doubt she would want to hear from me." "That's just it, though. She kept talking about you last night, about how you were the only real friend she ever had, and how she drove you away because she was selfish and stupid. She said she understands now why you fell in love with Marcus, because he's everything Tyler pretended to be, but isn't." I could see the conflict playing out across Zoe's face. Despite everything that had happened, despite the harsh words and burned bridges, part of her still cared about Natalie. "Where is she now?" Zoe asked. "I don't know. She left around dawn and hasn't answered her phone since. I'm worried she might do something stupid. She kept saying she had lost everything that mattered, and that it was all her own fault." Zoe closed her eyes and I could see her wrestling with the decision. "Ashley, I'll try calling her, but I can't promise anything. Too much has happened between us." "Thank you. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only person who might be able to get through to her." After Ashley hung up, Zoe stared at her phone for a long moment. "I have to try, don't I?" "You don't have to do anything," I said gently, "but I can see that you want to. She was my best friend for years. Even after everything she did, even after the things she said about us, I can't just ignore the fact that she might be in crisis." Zoe leaned against me on the bench. "Is that stupid? Am I being naive?" "It's not stupid. It's one of the things I love about you. You don't write people off, even when they've hurt you." I kissed the top of her head. "But you also need to protect yourself. If you're going to reach out to her, you need to be prepared for any response you might get." Zoe nodded and dialed Natalie's number. It rang several times before going to voicemail. She tried twice more with the same result before leaving a message. "Natalie, it's Zoe. Ashley called me and she's worried about you. I know things have been difficult between us, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. Please, call me back." We spent the rest of the evening trying to enjoy our walk, but I could tell Zoe was distracted, checking her phone every few minutes for a response. That didn't come. It wasn't until we were getting ready for bed that Natalie finally called back. "Zoe?" Her voice was hoarse, like she had been crying for hours. "Hi, Natalie. I got your message from Ashley. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I'm the opposite of okay." There was a pause, and I could hear traffic in the background. "I'm sitting in my car outside the apartment building where Marcus and I used to live, and I can't stop thinking about how badly I screwed everything up." "Natalie, where exactly are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe. Physically, anyway. Emotionally, I think I might be broken beyond repair." Her voice was slurred slightly, and I wondered if she had been drinking. "Zoe, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize." "Okay. I was wrong about everything. About you, about Marcus, about Tyler, about what I wanted from life. I convinced myself that excitement and passion were more important than loyalty and kindness, and I threw away the best things in my life chasing something that turned out to be nothing. Zoe put the phone on speaker so I could hear the conversation. Her eyes met mine, and I could see her struggling with how to respond. Tyler left me, Natalie continued. He said being married to me was exhausting, that I was too needy and demanding. He said he remembered why he stopped talking to me in the first place when we were teenagers. Can you believe that? He pursued me, convinced me to leave Marcus, married me, and then decided I was too much work. I'm sorry that happened. To you. Are you, really? Because I wouldn't blame you if you were secretly happy that everything fell apart for me. I said terrible things about you and Marcus. I called you a traitor and accused you of stabbing me in the back when really, you were just finally brave, enough to go after what you wanted. Natalie, I never wanted you to be unhappy. Even when I was angry and hurt by the things you said, I never wanted your life to fall apart. That's the difference between us, isn't it? You're a better person than I am. You always were. Natalie's voice broke. Marcus knew that. That's why he fell in love with you, instead of staying loyal to someone who didn't deserve it. I wanted to interrupt, to tell Natalie that this wasn't about her deserving or not deserving love. But Zoe caught my eye and shook her head slightly. This was Natalie's moment to talk, and Zoe was going to let her have it. I keep thinking about all the times you supported me when I was being unreasonable or selfish, Natalie went on. Remember when I dated that guy junior year who treated you like garbage because he thought you were competition for my attention? You never said anything, just quietly stepped back so I could be happy. And when I got that internship you wanted, you congratulated me and helped me prepare for my first day even though I knew you were disappointed. Natalie, that's what friends do. No, that's what good friends do. That's what you did. I just took and never gave anything back. And when you finally found something that made you happy, instead of supporting you, I threw a tantrum because it meant I couldn't have your undivided attention anymore. Zoe was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she listened to her former best friend's breakdown. Where are you staying tonight? Are you going to be safe? I'm staying at a hotel downtown, and yes, I'll be safe. I'm not going to do anything dramatic if that's what you're worried about. I just needed to call you and tell you that I understand. Now, I understand why Marcus chose you, and I understand why you chose him. You two make sense in a way that Tyler and I never did. Natalie, I miss you, Natalie said simply. I miss having a friend who actually cared about me as a person, instead of just tolerating me because I was fun to party with. I miss having someone who challenged me to be better, instead of just enabling my worst impulses. I miss you too, Zoe admitted. I miss the version of you that existed before Tyler came back into the picture. I miss the friend who used to stay up all night with me talking about our dreams and fears. Do you think... Natalie's voice became very small. Do you think there's any chance we could try to be friends again? Not right away, I know it would take time. But someday? Zoe looked at me, and I nodded encouragingly. Whatever else Natalie had done, she was clearly in pain and genuinely remorseful. If Zoe wanted to leave the door open for future reconciliation, I would support her. I think maybe someday we could try, Zoe said carefully. But it would have to be different than before. I can't go back to being the friend who always accommodates and never pushes back. And you'd have to accept that Marcus and I are married and happy, and that's not going to change. I know. I would never try to interfere with your marriage. I can see that you two belong together in a way that Marcus and I never did. Natalie paused. Is he there? Can I talk to him for just a minute? Zoe looked at me questioningly, and I nodded, taking the phone from her hands. Hi, Natalie. Marcus, I owe you an apology too, a big one. You don't owe me anything. We both made mistakes in our relationship. No, don't do that. Don't be generous and forgiving when I was planning to humiliate you in front of everyone we knew. I was going to let you stand at that altar and wait for a bride who was never going to show up. That's not a mistake. That's cruelty. I sat down on the edge of our bed, feeling the weight of her words. Why didn't you just break up with me when you realized you wanted to be with Tyler? Because I was a coward. Because breaking up with you would have meant admitting that I was throwing away something good for something uncertain. It was easier to tell myself that you'd get over it eventually, that you'd find someone better and thank me for setting you free. She laughed bitterly, which is exactly what happened, but not the way I planned it. Natalie, I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger isn't good for anyone. You made your choice, and it led Zoe and me to make ours. In a strange way, everything worked out the way it was supposed to. You're a better man than I deserved, Marcus. Take care of Zoe. She's lucky to have someone who sees her worth. I'm the lucky one. After we hung up, Zoe and I lay in bed talking about the conversation until well past midnight. It felt strange to have closure with Natalie after months of silence and hostility. I wasn't sure if she and Zoe would ever truly be friends again, but it felt good to know that the anger and bitterness that had poisoned the end of all our relationships was finally starting to heal. Do you think she meant it? Zoe asked, as we finally started to drift off to sleep. About understanding why we ended up together? I think she's finally mature enough to see that excitement and stability aren't mutually exclusive, I said, pulling her closer. Tyler gave her excitement without substance. We have both. What do you mean? I mean that every day with you is an adventure, but it's an adventure I can count on. You surprise me and challenge me and make me want to be better. But you also make me feel safe and valued and understood. I kissed her forehead. That's not boring, Natalie. That's everything. As I fell asleep that night, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. A year ago, I had been planning a wedding with someone who saw me as a safe backup plan. Now I was married to someone who saw me as her greatest adventure. Sometimes the most unexpected detours lead you exactly where you need to be. 2 years had passed since that phone call with Natalie, and our life in Portland had transformed into something I could never have imagined when I was planning a wedding with the wrong person. Zoe's art career had exploded beyond our wildest dreams. Her paintings now hung in galleries from Seattle to San Francisco, and she had just signed with a prestigious agent who was arranging her first solo exhibition in New York. My consulting firm had grown from a one-man operation to a team of 12, specializing in helping small towns transition to renewable energy. We had just landed a contract with the state of Oregon that would keep us busy for the next 5 years. Success felt different when shared with someone who genuinely celebrated your victories, instead of seeing them as competition for attention. The morning started like any other, with Zoe working in her studio while I reviewed contracts in our home office. We'd moved to a larger space in the Hawthorne district, a converted warehouse with soaring ceilings and enough room for both our professional ambitions and our growing collection of art from local artists. I was deep in spreadsheets when Zoe appeared in my doorway, paint smudged on her cheek, and an expression I couldn't quite read on her face. "There's someone here to see us," she said quietly. "Both of us." Before I could ask who, I heard a familiar voice from our living room. "Marcus? Is that you? Is that—" I followed Zoe out to find Natalie standing by our large windows, looking out at the city skyline. She looked completely different from the last time I had seen her. Her hair was shorter, styled in a sleek bob that framed her face. She was wearing a simple black dress and minimal makeup, and there was something calmer about her presence, less frantic energy. "Natalie," I said, genuinely surprised. "What brings you here?" She turned from the window with a small smile. "I wanted to congratulate you both in person. I saw the article about Zoe's upcoming exhibition in the Arts Weekly, and I heard through Derek that your business is thriving." Zoe and I exchanged glances. In the 2 years since their reconciliation phone call, they had exchanged occasional text messages but had never met face to face. "Thank you," Zoe said carefully. "That's very kind of you. I also wanted to tell you both something important." Natalie sat down on our sofa, her posture relaxed in a way I remembered from our early dating days. "I'm leaving Portland. I got a job offer in Denver, heading up marketing for a nonprofit that focuses on environmental education. It's exactly the kind of work I always said I wanted to do, but never had the courage to pursue." "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. "Congratulations." The thing is, I realized I can't move forward with my life until I properly close this chapter. I never really apologized to either of you, not in person. I was too wrapped up in my own pain and embarrassment to do it right. She stood up and faced us both directly. Marcus, I'm sorry for betraying your trust and planning to humiliate you at our wedding. I'm sorry for taking your loyalty for granted and treating your kindness like weakness. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I nodded, feeling a sense of completion I hadn't realized I needed. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Zoe, Natalie continued, turning to my wife. I'm sorry for being a selfish friend who expected you to always put my needs first. I'm sorry for calling you a traitor when you were just finally brave enough to choose your own happiness. And I'm sorry it took me this long to realize that you and Marcus together make perfect sense. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. Natalie, thank you. That means more to me than you know. I need you both to understand something, Natalie said, her voice growing stronger. Watching your marriage from a distance, seeing how you support each other's dreams and how genuinely happy you are together, taught me what love actually looks like. Tyler and I had passion, but we didn't have partnership. We had excitement, but we didn't have respect. What you two have is what I should have been looking for all along. Have you found that? Zoe asked gently. Someone who appreciates you for who you really are? Natalie smiled, and for the first time since I had known her, it looked completely genuine. Actually, yes. His name is David, and he's a teacher at an elementary school in Denver. He's patient and funny, and thinks my intensity is charming instead of exhausting. We're taking things slow, but I think I'm finally learning how to be in a healthy relationship. We talked for another hour, sharing updates about mutual friends and laughing about memories from better times. When Natalie finally stood to leave, she hugged us both goodbye. I want you to know, she said at the door, that I'm genuinely grateful for how everything turned out. If I hadn't made such a spectacular mess of things, I never would have learned who I really am or what I actually want from life. In a weird way, losing both of you was the best thing that ever happened to me. After she left, Zoe and I sat on our couch in comfortable silence, processing the unexpected visit. How do you feel? I asked. Peaceful, Zoe said after a moment. Like we can all finally move forward without any unfinished business hanging over us. Do you think she's really changed? I think she's finally growing up. It only took her until she was 31, but better late than never. Zoe curled up against my side. I'm proud of her for having the courage to come here and face us both. That evening, as we prepared dinner together in our kitchen, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 years ago, I had been planning to marry someone who saw me as a consolation prize. Now I was married to someone who saw me as the grand prize, and even my ex-fiancée had found her way to happiness. Do you ever wonder what advice you'd give to someone in a similar situation? Zoe asked as we sat down to eat. Someone who's about to marry the wrong person? Trust your instincts, I said without hesitation. If you're having doubts, there's probably a reason. And don't be afraid to take a chance on something that feels right, even if the timing seems wrong or the circumstances are complicated. What about someone who's in love with their friend's partner? Be honest about your feelings, but don't interfere. If it's meant to be, the situation will resolve itself naturally. And if it doesn't, at least you'll know you acted with integrity. Zoe smiled and raised her wine glass. To taking chances on love. To finding the right person at exactly the right time, I countered. As we toasted, I thought about how different my life was now compared to 3 years ago. Sometimes the biggest disasters lead to the greatest blessings. Sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something infinitely better. Our story wasn't conventional, and it wasn't without its complications. But it was ours, built on genuine affection, mutual respect, and the kind of deep compatibility that makes everyday life feel like an adventure. That was worth everything we had gone through to find it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.